Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in part 7 of the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 13, Aftermath, Just what in the world were you thinking? Smack. Ouch. Toshinori winced as Recovery Girl bonked him over the head with her cane, the little old woman still looking him over. They were in the youthful heroine's office, the number one hero having resided to one of the beds with his feet dangling over the edge of the bed. His shirt was off as Recovery Girl inspected his massive scar, the wound having taken a hit during the battle. Izuku was standing in the room as well, the quirk inheritor cringing slightly at the sight of his mentor being reprimanded for his actions. I swear, I wish you wouldn't push yourself this far, All Might. The old lady scolded. You already exceeded your 3-hour time limit today, so you had to know what would have happened. Toshinori let out a sigh and lowered his head. Yes, I did. And I'm sorry about that. I honestly didn't think that I'd have to push myself so far, but damn. He grimaced up toward the ceiling. That Nomu thing was absolutely no joke. It forced me to go over 100%, and it might have nicked off a bit of my time limit on top of that. Izuku's eyes widened in shock. Wait, what? Really? Relax, young Midoriya. Toshinori waved. I'm sure it's not that much. For all we know, things could have been a whole lot worse. Imagine if he cut himself off, remembering that Recovery Girl was still in the office. If Brian hadn't incapacitated the Nomu like you told me he did. Izuku let out a sigh and lowered his head a bit, a fearful gaze directing itself toward the ground. Toshinori immediately took notice. Young Midoriya, what's the matter? It really could have been worse, All Might. Izuku swallowed hard and he put a hand to his arm, holding himself for support. Why you see, that decay guy, Shiguraki, he almost got to Kyoka. Toshinori's eyes widened as Izuku went on. He had Kurogiri open up a portal to where we were hiding and reached for Kyoka's face, and I had this image of her just decaying in my mind, and… Sonny, you're rambling. Recovery Girl piped up, the greenette silencing himself immediately. Ever since he found out that Recovery Girl knew about All Might's true form and One for All, he had grown a lot more respect for the old lady, more than he already had. And he knew what would probably happen if he didn't get control of himself. She gave him a kind smile and nodded. What's important is that she's still with us. I take it you managed to get her out of harm's way, right? Izuku nodded and swallowed. Why yeah, I pulled her down just in time. He blushed profusely at the next part. I mean, we kinda ended up in an awkward position because of that, but. Toshinori couldn't help but smile and let out a chuckle, sending his protege a knowing face. I see where this is going. Izuku stopped for a moment and gave his mentor a confused face. Why you do? Both Toshinori and Recovery Girl chuckled at that. Young Midoriya, have you entertained the idea that you might just like young Jiro a little more than you're letting on? The pro hero asked. Izuku's eyes widened to the size of basketballs and he immediately went to one of the best things that worked for him in the past, denial. What? No, of course not. Ha ha ha, he said as he waved his arms around frantically. Why would you think that? I mean it's true that we spend a whole lot of time together and we're good friends and everything, but I think you might be jumping the gun here a little by. Sonny, you two are practically joined at the hip while you're here at school. Recovery Girl said with a grin of her own. Plus, the fact that you were so frightened for her safety is another big indicator. She pointed her cane at him. I can see it in your eyes just a few moments ago, you were afraid that she would be killed. And you care about her so much that your gut instinct was to rescue her at any cost. Very chivalrous if I do say so myself. The quirk inheritor stared in shock at Recovery Girl's words before turning to All Might, the man still smiling at his young pupil. Well, she's not wrong. Toshinori extended his hand. Be honest, young Midoriya. Do you have feelings for young Jiro? After glancing back and forth between the two adults, Izuku sighed and resigned to his fate, knowing that he couldn't deny it. Why yes, I do have feelings for Kyoka, but I'm still not entirely sure how to go about them. He directed his attention over to All Might. After all, given the circumstances that I've been put into with One for All, Plus the fact that I'm training to become a hero, I'm not really sure how having a love life could really work for me. Toshinori's face became serious and he gave Izuku a nod. An astute point. The fact that you possess one for all now will definitely put a target on your back. The types of enemies I've faced over the years will be a lot for you to handle, that's a fact. And they'll do anything to try and get to you, including going after your loved ones. The blonde man craned his head down slightly. That's mainly the reason why I never had a relationship of my own, because I knew of the hardships that would be brought to whoever my partner was should my enemies take advantage of me being with her. Why yeah, that's basically what I'm worried about with Kyoka. Izuku admitted, sitting down in the nearest chair. I know that she can defend herself, but still, if the wrong enemy comes along, it could cost me losing her. You're very right, Toshinori agreed, but I still think you should go for it. That was what really got Izuku's attention. What? But I thought you said. Just because I did that doesn't mean you have to suffer the same fate, young Midoriya. All Might clarified, setting a hand on the boy's shoulder. You have your whole life ahead of you yet, so you should enjoy every single bit of it before the world of villains comes crashing down on you. And even when it does, you should still look to the ones you care about most to draw your strength from. You've inherited my quirk, yes, but it shouldn't come with all of the baggage that I've put on myself. Toshinori smiled and gave Izuku a nod. If you feel like your feelings for young Jiro are genuine, then you should take a chance and see if she feels the same. Izuku stared at his teacher in shock and slight disbelief, now very unsure how to feel at this moment. On the one hand, All Might was basically telling him that it was okay for him to be in a relationship, even while learning to handle one for all and how to be a hero. But on the other hand, I'm still really scared to make that jump. I mean, I've only known her for about a month now, and... But then, Recovery Girl jumped in again. Oh Sonny, don't be so nervous about that. Feelings develop at all sorts of paces. Sometimes it's a year, others, it's a month, heck, I saw a young couple last year who fell for each other over the course of a week. They were both injured pretty badly and came to my office at the same time, they got to talking and in 7 days. Recovery Girl snapped her fingers. Poof. Instant couple. Pretty sure they're still together too. Point being, we all find that special someone at our own pace, so don't be discouraged about feeling that it's too soon. The young man had to admit, this was all very surprising in terms of supportive pep talks. He glanced over to Toshinori again and tilted his head. So, if I do this, do I tell her about one for all? I mean, she already knows about your true form already. Toshinori sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. Honestly, that's your call to make, young Midoriya. If you want to tell her about one for all eventually, I won't make any attempts to stop you, especially if you trust her enough with that kind of secret. He raised a finger up to the ceiling. But you have to be aware that once she does know, she'll have to be prepared for everything that comes with it, just like you. Alright, I gotcha. Izuku trailed off and glanced to the ground, breathing a heavy sigh and hugging his arms around him. I honestly still don't know if I'm ready to take a leap like that, though. My confidence is. Yes, I know. Toshinori smiled and pointed at his pupil. Tell you what, I'll give you a little caveat. You tell her about your feelings by the end of the summer, or else I will. And that made Izuku's eye widen again. What? Ooh, how interesting. Recovery Girl said as she began to pack up her things. You heard me, young Midoriya. Toshinori said with a wicked, skeletal grin. If you can let your feelings out to her by the time you return from summer vacation, then I won't blurt it out to her. You should have enough time to build your confidence up by then, surely. How does that sound? Izuku narrowed his eyes at his teacher with a frown on his face. You know, for the greatest hero in history, you are very evil. I try. The blonde man said with an extended hand. So what do you say? Deal. With his eyes focused on Toshinori's hand, Izuku sighed and shook it, giving him a nod. Deal. Good to hear. Now let's, knock. Everyone's eyes went over to the door and it opened up, revealing a tall man in a trench coat and brimmed hat came into the room. He had dark eyes and black hair, and he wore a kind smile on his face as he removed his hat. Pardon the intrusion, I hope I'm not barging in on anything, the man said. All Might's eyes widened and he gasped. Ah, Tsukauchi. I didn't know you were working on this case. Izuku also gasped, reeling back in surprise. All Might, he's seeing you like this and it's okay. The skeletal man turned to his student with a reassuring hand raised. Oh yeah, he's fine. Izuku Midoriya, this is Detective Naomasa Tsukauchi of the police force. He's also a good friend of mine, and he knows about One for All as well. Toshinori craned his head around and nodded to the detective. Tsukauchi, this is the one I've been telling you about. Ah, so you're the young inheritor, huh? Tsukauchi extended his hand to Izuku and nodded. It's nice to meet you, Midoriya. And nice to meet you, too. Izuku accepted the handshake. All Might leaned forward with a concerned expression on his face. Tell me, are the children all alright? Tsukauchi gave his friend a wave. Aside from a few scratches and bruises, they're all fine. So don't worry about them. A and 13 and Aizawa, what about them? The detective pursed his lips at that question. Well, I'm happy to inform you that they'll live, but they were pretty badly injured. They should both make a full recovery given time, but it'll be slow goings for them over the next couple of weeks at the most. Toshinori signed and lowered his head. Well, it's not exactly the news I wanted to hear, but I'm just glad that they're all going to be okay. Tsukauchi nodded, his smile still present. Yes, but think of it this way, if you, Aizawa and 13 hadn't fought off those villains like you did, the kids would have been in far worse shape than they are right now. Hey, well, maybe so. Toshinori chuckled as he glanced over to Izuku. But all of these students fought very bravely. To the point where they made those villains look like incompetent fools. I'm sure that they'll all be great heroes one day. Tsukauchi nodded once again at that while Izuku rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. By the way, whatever happened to that monster I punched? Oh, that thing. Tsukauchi rubbed the back of his head. It's actually the strangest thing, we found it, and it was dead. This caught Izuku and All Might's attention very quickly. From what we were told, it had a regeneration quirk, so we didn't expect to find it dead, but someone seemed to have cut out its brain entirely. Not sure who, but honestly, I see this as only a net positive. This way, we'll be able to run some DNA tests without chancing it going out of control now and… Knock knock knock. The group lifted their heads up and set their gazes toward the door, where Kyoko was now standing. The earphone jack user was carrying both hers and Izuku's backpacks with her as well. Sorry to interrupt, but… You young lady, Tsukauchi said with worry in his voice. I don't think you should be in here. Tsukauchi, wait, it's okay. All Might assured. She saw me like this back at the USJ. She deserves an explanation. The detective blinked in surprise before glancing around, reading the room pretty quickly. Oh, I see. He cleared his throat and put his hat back on. Well then, I can tell that there's gonna be some pretty heavy stuff to talk about, so, I'll just head out for now. He gave Toshinori one final nod as he moved past Kyoko. We'll talk about this later, though, right Toshi? I particularly want to speak to you about that intern of yours. Shit, Toshinori thought to himself. Of course a few of the kids must have told him about Bumblebee's actions during that fight. The hero cleared his throat and gave his friend a wave. Right, tomorrow over coffee. The usual place. I'll see you then, Tsukauchi. Tsukauchi gave one final smile as he tipped his hat, leaving not a second later. Well, I can tell that I'm not really gonna be much help in this conversation, too. Recovery girl said as she picked up her medical bag and her purse as well. Your suit is on the counter, All Might. Come see me tomorrow morning for a secondary checkup, okay? Toshinori sighed and nodded. Yes, recovery girl, I understand. With that, the youthful heroine departed, leaving All Might, Izuku and Kyoko as the only ones left in the room. Kyoko walked over to another empty chair and handed Izuku his backpack. Here, snag this for ya. Thank you, Yeoch. Just as Izuku grabbed his backpack, one of Kyoko's jacks came down and jabbed him in the arm, making him recoil in shock. Kyoka. What was that for? But he cut himself off when he saw the scrutinizing face he was getting from the girl, only then remembering the situation they were in. Oh, right. Listen, I'm sorry that I didn't tell you about All Might, but this wasn't a secret that we could take lightly. He bowed his head to her apologetically. I hope you can forgive me. The boy heard a sigh before a hand came up and ruffled his hair, taking him by surprise. Green bean, of course I forgive you. In fact, I'm not even mad, just a little frustrated. She took her hand off his head and used her jacks to lift his chin up, their eyes meeting. After all the crap we've been through today, finding out about this just adds on to the shock value. Kyoka gestured to All Might as she said that, making the hero rub his neck nervously. Toshinori took in a deep breath as his eyes focused in on the punk rocker. So, I suppose you're looking for an explanation. Kyoka sat herself down, setting two backpacks on the floor next to her. Duh. You think I don't want to know why the number one pro hero is a walking skeleton? I'll warn you right now, young Jiro, the story behind this is not a pretty one. Trust me, after what I and the rest of 1A have gone through today, I think I'm prepared. Kyoka assured, waving her hand toward him again. So, let's hear it. Toshinori bowed his head to her respectfully. Good to hear, because you'll want to brace yourself when you see this. All Might lifted up his white undershirt and revealed his scar, making Kyoka's eyes widen and her lips part in astonishment. Ya see, pretty gross, isn't it? You wanna know the reason why I really look like a withered sack of skin and bones? Well, here's the reason. Kyoka almost couldn't find the words, with Izuku putting a hand to her shoulder. When did you get? 5 years ago, Toshinori explained. I got into a fight with a very powerful villain. It was a fight that I tried to keep under wraps. Only a few people know of this battle, and it's one that almost cost me my life. The hero put his shirt down and lanced his bony fingers together. I did manage to survive, though, but at the cost of pretty much my entire stomach and my respiratory system. This is why I can only appear in my muscle form for a handful of hours at a time each day, and over the years, it's only been declining. Right now, I can only be All Might for about 3 hours a day, and there will be a time where I won't be able to be All Might at all. If anything, this only made Kyoka's jaw drop even further. Wait, are you saying? All Might nodded solemnly. Yes, young Jiro, my days as All Might are slowly coming to an end. If I'm lucky, I can get a year, maybe 2 left out of my hero career. The punk rocker craned her head down and put her hands to her temples, trying to comprehend what she was just told. A world, without All Might. Her eyes shot back up to the hero in the hospital bed in concern. But, you're the symbol of peace. What's going to happen once you do retire? You know how many villains are gonna be so gung-ho about that. It's gonna be chaos. I agree, Toshinori affirmed, pointing a finger over to the greenette next to Kyoka. Which is why I took him under my wing in the first place. Kyoka's eyes darted to her left toward Izuku, the young man wearing a serious expression as he gave a single nod. Izuku, the training that you've been doing with All Might, have you been training to be his successor? Why yes, Izuku confirmed. I have. Do you remember the sludge villain attack that happened in Musudafu almost a year ago? Kyoka gave a nod. Well, I was involved in that, and All Might rescued me. But then, I discovered All Might's true form after he did. He's correct. All Might jumped back in. And during the whole scuffle, I saw young Midoriya come to the aid of one of his peers who was caught up in the sludge villain's clutches, young Bakugo. Kyoka deadpanned at that, glancing over to Izuku with an unamused face. Gee, why am I not surprised? Izuku craned his head down toward the ground. I know, but I couldn't just sit by and watch Kacchan die. So, I went in and I tried to help, my legs moving pretty much on their own. It was an action that I was so impressed by. Toshinori continued. This seemingly quirkless boy had summoned enough courage to rescue one of his fellow students, even when it was not wise for him to do so. It had been a long time since I had seen true heroism such as that. I see, Kyoka tilted her head a bit. But that leads me to another question. We all know how insanely powerful Izuku's quirk is now, but, back then, everyone thought he didn't have one. She raised a brow toward the hero. If that's the case, then, did you somehow know that he had this dormant quirk? Toshinori gave a shrug. In a way, I suppose you could say that. My own quirk doesn't exactly give me the ability to sense other strong quirks like it, but there was just something in my gut that told me that young Midoriya was, more than meets the eye, so to speak. Kyoka once again deadpanned. Alright, that was a cheesy line. And 2, you went on gut instinct. She smiled and glanced over to Izuku. Hey, well, I guess you're pretty lucky that everything worked out, then. Hee, I suppose so. Izuku said with a small laugh, all while thinking to himself, I just hope she's not too mad when I eventually do tell her about One for All. Toshinori gave another sigh as he swung his legs over the side of his bed, his feet hitting the floor. Well, that's pretty much the whole story, young Jiro. I hope you found the answer to your liking. He gave a serious face toward the earphone jack user. But, you must solemnly swear not to tell anyone else about my true form. It's imperative that the public not know about me in this state, otherwise, the people will begin to panic. I understand. Kyoka nodded. The last thing we need is to have the public going crazy or villains thinking that you'll be a cakewalk to take down. She made a zippering motion over her mouth. You can trust me, my lips are sealed. Good to hear, Toshinori said as he stood up, heading over to the counter to get his yellow suit. Now, I suggest you kids go. No doubt young Hatsume is going to have a lot of questions about what happened at the USJ. Both Izuku and Kyoka's eyes widened at that. Oh, right. Izuku wore a sheepish face and gulped a little. She probably won't be the only one who has questions. Toshinori raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Kyoka winced and sucked in a sharp breath. You see, we weren't the only ones in the mountain zone when Bee and Windblade found us. Momo Yaoyorozu was with us, too, and she saw both Bee and Windblade in their robot modes. She saw All Might's eyes almost bug out of his skull, which didn't do anything to settle her nerves. So, should we explain everything to her, or? Well, everything except what we just discussed here, that's for sure. Toshinori said as he put his school jacket on. There's no going back when it comes to giant robots. She's in on the secret now, and it'll have to be both your jobs to make sure that she acclimates to that. The blonde man glanced down toward the ground. I would go to help you right now, but without rest, I can only keep my muscle form up for only seconds at most. That's okay, All Might. Izuku assured. We'll tell her everything, and we'll make sure she doesn't lose her mind about it, hopefully. Hey, here's hoping. Kyoka said as both she and Izuku began heading toward the door. We'll see you later, All Might, and, thanks for telling me about this. The symbol of peace smiled and bowed his head to Kyoka. It's no trouble, young Jiro. And thank you for keeping this secret. I'll see the both of you tomorrow. With that, the duo took their leave, and All Might was left in the nurse's office to contemplate everything that had just happened over the course of the day. Well, things around here just seemed to keep getting more and more interesting. He set his gaze out the window, his mind going back to the fight he just had not a half hour ago. Still, I have a feeling that things are only just beginning, his brows furrowed in contemplation. Because a creature of that strength and magnitude, it reeks distinctly of his handiwork. Okay, so basically, the principal said that we don't have school tomorrow. Kyoka explained as she and Izuku strolled out to the parking lot, the duo getting eyed by multiple students as they did. He said that we could all use a breather after experiencing that. Why yeah, I can agree with that. Izuku nodded, while also taking note of how many students were staring at them. Okay, so why are there so many people staring at us like we have no heads? Kyoka finished slyly. Dude, we just experienced something that no other student here has. We're probably going to be getting these stares for a while. The girl grimaced as she heard faint mumblings from behind them, her eyes shifting toward a couple second-year students giving them narrow-eyed glares. And we're probably gonna be the envy of a few of them, too. Izuku saw the two students in question as they stepped away, swallowing his apprehension before letting out a breath. No idea why they would envy us for being attacked, really. Not exactly something you'd want to brag about, right? Kyoka shook her head. Maybe not to normal people, but think about it, Broccoli Boy, we survived a real villain attack. And there's no doubt this story's gonna be all over the news tomorrow. She scoffed a little bit before going on. As much as I hate to say it, our class is probably gonna be getting a lot of attention, hooray. Why yeah, hooray. Izuku chortled. So where do you think Hatsume is? Guys. Izuku and Kyoka let out a yelp as Mei suddenly jumped them from behind, the girl putting her arms around both of them with a big grin on her face. Haha, you're alive. I heard everything that happened from Bumblebee. Oh my gosh, it sounded like you guys could have used a ton of babies in that position, but I'm glad the baby you did have actually worked. Kyoka managed to get out a laugh. Huh, yeah, they worked out pretty well, Hatsume. I'm guessing you got our signal, too. Mei let go of them and gave them a beaming smile. Oh yeah, I got in when I was in the middle of class. And believe it or not, I told Power Loader about all of it, and once he saw how serious I was being, he immediately left to go gather the other teachers. A wide, toothy grin came to Mei's face as she bounced up and down. Hee hee, my babies helped. Ah, oh, and Bumblebee actually told me about our new lady friend. Both Izuku and Kyoka's eyes widened as they saw a certain someone step up behind Mei, leading the former to point behind her. Why you mean that one? Mei's eyebrows shot up and she spun around, only to come face to face with Momo Yaoyorozu. The duo blinked at each other a couple times before Mei's smile returned. Oh yeah, you made two lady friends, didn't ya? She put a hand behind her head. Admittedly, I was more focused on the metal one than the fleshy one, but still, neat. Thank you, I think. Momo raised an eyebrow and glanced over to Kyoka and Izuku. I take it that she knows about the whole situation as well. Kyoka sighed and nodded. Yeah, she is. Yao Momo, meet Mei Hatsume. Mei, this is Momo Yaoyorozu. She found out about the bots by accident, so we kinda owe her an explanation. I see. Mei gave Momo a skeptical expression, putting a hand to her chin as the raven-haired beauty shrunk back a bit nervously. Tell me, are you in any way affiliated with any government agencies? And not that I know of. Momo answered reluctantly. But given my father, I never know. Mei beamed in delight and gave Momo's shoulder a hearty pat, nearly making her double over. Then you're A-okay in my book, Yao Momo. Glad to know you already have a great nickname, because I can never remember names all that well. I see. Momo set her gaze over to Izuku and Kyoka, curiosity written across her features. So, are we going to go see Bumblebee, beep beep. The four teens all snapped their heads around to see the aforementioned disguised robot not too far away from them, his holoform waving to them from out his window. The blonde then pointed over toward the nearby tree line and began to drive off toward it, ushering the teens to follow him. What's he doing? Something tells me this is important. Kyoka said as she started off after the slow-moving bug. Come on, let's go. With that, the quartet followed after Bumblebee toward the woods, the beetle stopping about 50 feet in. He raised his hand, indicating that the others should stop. Kyoka glanced around and said, okay, so, why are we, wait. Her jacks perked up at the sound of metal footfalls approaching them, her body turning around to the direction they were coming from. A grin came to her face as she moved her head up. Oh, looks like we've got company. The others followed her line of sight, and Mei gasped at what she saw. There, standing before all of them, was Windblade. The red and black robot settled her blue optics onto all four of them and gave a smile. Ah, so there you all are. I've been waiting for, hold on. She raised an eyelid as her optics zeroed in on Mei. Did you guys gain another member? Hey, yeah, Kyoka chuckled. Windblade, this is our friend, Mei Hatsume. Mei, this is... Eeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeee armor plating like she had just opened a Christmas present. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Ah, a real female robot. I knew that they had to be a thing. Okay. Windblade scratched her helm, unsure of what to make of this organic. She eyed Kyoka, Izuku and Momo curiously as Mei began to zip all over the place, to the point that she was actually appearing on different parts of Windblade's body. Her hip, her shoulder, her head, you name it, Mei was there inspecting Windblade thoroughly. Could somebody please explain why she is doing this to me? Izuku rubbed the back of his head. Sorry, Windblade, Hatsume has been really invested in finding out more about your race. Ever since Bumblebee remembered RC, she's been on a kick about knowing that a race of robots is able to have genders. Windblade gave a shrug. Well, of course. We're not just robots, after all. We're biomechanical organisms. I knew it, Mei exclaimed, the pinkett jumping directly over Windblade's head. The femme gasped in surprise before catching Mei, the girl producing a notepad and pencil from her pocket. Tell me, does that mean that you can reproduce? Or heck, does that mean you have any reproductive organs at all? I'm fairly certain we don't. Windblade said as she set May down. Our species is created not through reproductive means, really. We do not birth them through our bodies like most organic beings do. Haha, I figured, May said as she began writing notes down. Now that said, if that is the case, then does your race not have romantic feelings? Windblade shook her head. Oh no, far from it. Like other sentient organisms, we also have a wide variety of feelings. Kyoka and Izuku both glanced over to Bumblebee, the blonde holoform wearing a sheepish smile. Yeah, we kind of figured that already. And we are capable of forming very strong bonds with others of our race. Windblade continued. Love is a concept that is very common with us Cybertronians. The quartet's eyes widened at the last word, with May practically beaming at this point. And we have a name for him now. I can finally stop using the word transformer as a placeholder. Wait, transformer? Windblade asked with a small smirk. Really? That's what we said. Kyoka piped up. Hold on a minute, let's back up a little. Momo jumped back in, her eyes meeting Windblade's optics. If you're a Cybertronian, then I assume that means that you're from an alien planet. The femme pointed down to her. Bingo, Momo. The name of the planet is, of course, Cybertron, and it's a planet that's made up entirely of living metal. Windblab put a hand to her chest. And we Cybertronians are actually made of the same living metal, as when we are created, we actually emerge from the planet's surface itself. We call it being forged. May was furiously writing down on her notepad at this point. Interesting, very interesting. I'm learning so much. Momo put a hand to her face. As fascinating as this all is, I'm still wondering something. She craned her head up to Windblade again with a concerned face. Why have you come to Earth? Momo waved a hand over toward B. I mean, Bumblebee has to have been here for at least 300 years to have a vehicle mode like that, right? Again, you are correct, Momo. Windblade affirmed, a concerned expression of her own coming to her features. You see, 300 stellar cycles ago, or years as you humans say, our leaders sent a majority of our forces off-planet in an escape ship, the Ark, hoping that they would be able to escape the war and find an outpost for us to reconvene so we can have some hope of winning the war on our planet. But then, the Ark stopped transmitting around the coordinates of this planet, meaning that it's likely somewhere on Earth. This made everyone gasp, with Izuku, Kyoka and May realizing something in that moment. Wait a second, we actually did hear something about a war mentioned in a holographic message that BB has inside of him. Izuku explained. We found it by accident, but I'm aware of the message, Izuku. Windblade assured. Trust me, that's one of the first things that Bumblebee showed me. So, that robot. Kyoka spoke up again. B says that his name is Prime. Where is he? Yes, Optimus Prime. Windblade sighed and lowered her head a bit. I honestly couldn't tell you. He vanished when Cybertron fell, holding off our enemies long enough for the rest of us to escape. We were going to reconnoiter somewhere, but we never made contact with him. It was like he just disappeared. She shifted her optics over toward Bumblebee. I was hoping that B would have an idea where he could be since Optimus sent him to this planet in the first place to keep it safe, but, unfortunately, his mind has been fractured. The blonde holoform frowned in disappointment, only for Windblade to smile again. Fortunately, I think I know how to help him. This got all 4 teens and B's attention immediately. You do? Izuku exclaimed, with Kyoka and May all smiling along with him. Yep, you see, I'm B's. Windblade paused and her head turned toward Izuku, her irises furrowing in confusion. Did you just buzz, Izuku? Oh my gosh. Izuku took out his phone and noticed that he had a new text, from his mother. Oh man, it's my mom. I completely forgot about her. She must be worried sick. As if on cue, Kyoka's, Momo's and May's phones all began buzzing as well, leading all 3 of the girls to take a look at their own text messages. My old man's flipping out about what happened. Guess the school finally got word to our parents. Indeed, my mother's very concerned as well. Momo affirmed. Plus, it's getting really late, too. I think it's time we head home, you guys. May threw her head back in disappointment. But I wanna talk to Windblade more. I've been learning so much in such a short time. Kyoka gave Mei a smile and a pat on the shoulder. Hey, don't worry, Mei. We've got the entire day off tomorrow, so we'll be able to hang out with Windblade and ask her all sorts of questions. How does that make ya feel? In response, Mei let out another happy squeal. Thought so. Kyoka set her sights back to Windblade. Sorry that we gotta cut out, Windblade. Our parents are really worried about us, and... Oh no, it's fine, go on ahead. Windblade assured. Your families are calling you, after all, so you should let them know that you're all okay. We'll just meet up tomorrow, and, oh wait, I'm not too sure where we can meet up, though. Izuku gasped again and made a suggestion. We could meet up at All Might's place just outside of Tokyo. It's secluded enough where we can have two robots out in the middle on nowhere where no one can see you. Izuku brought up a map on his phone and showed it to Windblade. Here, this is where it is. Windblade brightened up at that, her optics analyzing the image on his phone and calculating the coordinates accordingly. Ah, sounds perfect. I've been wanting to meet this, All Might, so this works out perfectly. Wait just a moment, Momo shouted out, her eyes going straight to Izuku. Midoriya, you're saying that All Might knows about all of this, too. Izuku's face fell at the realization, he forgot to tell that to Momo right off the bat. Why yeah, that's another long story, don't worry, I'll tell you about it on our way to the train station, but for now, I think we need to get going. He's right, the sun's starting to go down. Kyoka added, but let's all agree to meet up at the Tokyo station tomorrow morning, okay? Then we'll head to All Might's place and continue this little discussion. Sounds good to me, Kyoka. Windblade agreed. Oh, and by the way, you guys won't have to worry about that monster anymore. The femme pulled out her energy blade for emphasis. I saw to that. A shocked expression came to Izuku's face. Wait, Detective Tsukauchi mentioned that Nomu's brain had been cut out of its head, that was you. Windblade nodded solemnly. Yes, and I took absolutely no pleasure in doing it. Optimus has a very adamant policy on not harming organic beings, but that thing, she shuddered as she felt a chill go through her systems. It just wasn't natural in the slightest, and I don't think it had any sentience to it at all. It didn't belong in a world like this. Now that, I can agree on. Kyoka agreed. Don't worry, Windblade, we won't judge you for that. The rest of the group nodded, reassuring Windblade that there was no harm done. Thank you, guys. Now, I'll see you tomorrow, okay? All of a sudden, Windblade's wings popped out of her back, and then, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Windblade jumped up and transformed into her VTOL jet mode, taking Mei completely by surprise. They can turn into jets too. Mei said with stars in her eyes. That is so amazing. Glad you think so. Windblade said, her cockpit flashing a little bit as she talked. Alright guys, have a safe trip back home, alright. Kyoka gave a thumbs up. You got it, Windblade. We'll see ya then. And with that, Windblade took off, leaving the group to themselves as they climbed into Bumblebee. Momo sighed as she buckled herself in. Honestly, while I did get some answers out of all this, I feel like I've been left with even more questions than before. She craned her head around toward the backseat, where the rest of the group were sitting. Just how in the world have you guys been able to deal with all of this crazy stuff? Honestly, Yaoyorozu, we've just learned how to roll with it. Izuku answered. Kyoka gave a shrug. Yeah, I mean, having a giant robot as a best friend. What's not to love about that? Next to Momo, Bumblebee smiled and played a little queen. ZRKT, oh, you're my best friend. The raven-haired beauty sighed and resigned herself to her seat, resting her chin to her hand. Well, I can already tell that I've gotten myself into something pretty deep, might as well try to roll with it as well. See, that's the spirit, Kyoka exclaimed, pointing a finger forward. Now come on, let's roll out before our parents send a search party after us or something. With a few affirming buzzes, Bumblebee drove back out of the woods and down the street toward the train station, the quartet of teens falling into a small conversation as they went, with Izuku and Kyoka explaining pretty much everything aside from a particular secret that they knew about a certain number 1 hero to Momo. By the end of that car ride, Momo knew that she was in it for the long haul, and she was oddly okay with that as she stepped on the train to Aichi Prefecture. It definitely beats the monotony of what happens back home at the mansion, that's for sure. Plus, I got some good, if somewhat strange friends out of this. Momo smiled brightly to herself on that last point. It's a win-win. William Fowler couldn't believe that this was happening. Out of all the things that Powell could have offered to stave the robots, it had to be accompanying them to their headquarters. Of course, they weren't in the actual HQ yet, but they at least knew where it was, meaning that if they decided to leak this information to their allies, it would mean they'd be in massive trouble. Fortunately, it didn't seem like either Shatter or Dropkick were doing much of anything yet. Fowler was staring at the live security footage on his phone, seeing the duo near the docking bay in their vehicle modes, waiting patiently to be let inside. Fowler sighed to himself and turned to the man next to him, who also happened to be the general in charge of this facility. "Abe, are you sure that this is a good idea?" General Abraham Whalen set his sights onto his old friend, the African-American man, making sure that his face was a fair distance away. After all, he didn't want his ram horns to knock Fowler in the head. "No, not really. Bill, I'm just as concerned as you are, but that's exactly why we're about to have this debate." I know. It's just, I'm concerned that they may find out about NBE-3's pod being down below." Fowler explained. "I know that he's under several football fields of concrete." Whalen finished off. "Meaning that his energy cannot be detected, even by the best scanners possible." He came to a stop just outside of the meeting room they were going to, placing a hand on Fowler's shoulder. "Bill, trust me, I'm just as skeptical about Powell's offer as you are. I'll make sure that he knows in no uncertain terms that this is on him. But, if we let them in, we have to make sure that we don't let it slip about NBE-3. If they find out that we have one of their own down below, then who knows what they'll do to us." He nudged his head toward the meeting room. "Now come on, it's time to start the debate." Fowler let out a sigh and shook his head. "All right, let's jump in." Fowler opened the door, revealing Powell, Jacob Burns, and many other high-ranking officials on the other side, the doctor standing while the agent sat at the table. "Gentlemen, glad you could join us here," General Whalen said as he shook each and every one their hands. "Let's get down to business, shall we? Dr. Powell, I heard from Agent Fowler that you all made quite the first contact." "Indeed we have, sir," Powell said with a very eager smile. "And we believe that we've just been presented with the opportunity of a lifetime. Not just in terms of making contact with an alien race, but potentially stopping a war from coming to our planet." Whalen nodded and put a hologram projector in the middle of the table. "Yes, I've heard." He pressed a remote and a hollow screen popped out of the projector, showing both Shatter and Dropkick waiting outside. "It seemed your new friends are waiting to gain entry." Jacob placed his hands on his legs, a serious expression on his face. "I hesitate to call them friends at this point, sir." He shifted his eyes around the table before making his point known to Powell. "I say this with all due respect, have you lost your goddamned mind?" "That was with all due respect." Powell shot back. "The man's got a point, Doctor," Whalen said with a shrug. "Our satellite network is at the forefront of our national defense. If they end up tampering with it in a way that won't allow us know just where the latest villain activity is, well, that could end in a disaster if the wrong villain shows up." "Sir, this could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," Powell countered. "Can you imagine the advances an alliance with these creatures might bring?" Fowler was quick to interject. "I imagine the advances, an advance on Tokyo. On Washington, London, hell, the entire world." But Powell was quick to deny that. "It's not going to happen, Fowler, you heard what they had to say. They literally call themselves Decepticons," Burns said, extending his hands in an imploring gesture. "Does that not raise any red flags?" "Enough," Whalen piped up. "From all of you." However, Powell wasn't done. "Sir, we're talking about the most advanced robotic system ever seen. This very well could be what gets the world back on track in the field of science and get US back into space." He took a brief pause. "And if we tell them no, then there's a chance that they'll take their technology to a more villainous group of individuals, including a certain one if he's still alive." This got the attention of pretty much everyone at the table, causing a bit of a clamor. Sir, we're in a time of relative peace. Do you want to take the chance of that being ruined? Waylon let out a sigh and slumped into his chair, thinking over the option presented to him. Right. We'll help them find their fugitive. What? Fowler exclaimed. But, when it's done, Waylon craned his head over to Powell. You can do all the experiments you want on him. How does that sound? Powell gave Waylon a silent nod, with the general setting his gaze over to Burns and Fowler, looking for their approval. The two agents glanced toward each other and then went back to Waylon, the two of them begrudgingly accepting the plan. It might not have been to their liking, but they couldn't risk the idea of villains getting a hold on this kind of technology. Yes sir, they both said. A short while later, Shatter and Dropkick were allowed inside of the facility, the Decepticon duo strolling through the massive corridors toward the intelligence room with Powell, Fowler and Burns leading the way. It was all Jacob and William could do to keep themselves from strangling the doctor in between them, but for now, they'd have to just suck it up and deal with the fact that there were two giant robots in their secure facility. Once they reached the intel room, Powell came to a stop, with everyone inside turning their attention toward the red and blue robots. Gentle, robots, Powell said as he presented the room before them. Welcome to Sector 7. How kind of you to finally allow us in. Dropkick grumbled. Powell smiled up and gave the Decepticons a nod. We're very happy to have you here, as friends. Shatter smiled and bowed her head back. Thank you very much, friend Powell. The doctor waved his hand to the room around him. My superior has agreed to grant you limited access to our satellites. And in addition, you are free to use all of our technology here. It's the latest array of supercomputers on Earth. Even the World Wide Web is at your fingertips. The femme put her hands together. We thank you for your hospitality. This World Wide Web of yours will be most useful, to be sure. Now, a sinister smile came to Shatter's face. Let the search for B-127 begin. Chapter 14. The city speaker tells all. The next day had arrived, and Izuku, Kyoka and Bumblebee were traveling along the road from Musudafu to Tokyo to meet up with their friends at the station in Chiyoda, the three of them eager to pick them up for a day that would prove to be quite interesting. Yesterday had been rather exhausting to say the least, but that didn't do anything to curb their enthusiasm for the day ahead of them. Because once they picked up Momo and May, they'd be headed to meet up with their newest robotic friend to learn more about Cybertron, the war, and hopefully, Bumblebee himself. However, they still had a bit of a drive left ahead of them, so they were doing what they usually did to pass the time, listen to music. Of course, the genres varied from song to song with no real rhyme or reason to them, but all the same, they still enjoyed themselves. But there was still one thing that had piqued Izuku's interest, the face that Kyoka kept mouthing along to the words for each song that came on. Now, Izuku was not a singer, that much was obvious. He was sure if he tried, he'd suffer from random voice cracks that would no doubt both hinder his performance and embarrass him to no end. That didn't stop him from humming along to the songs, though. But Kyoka, she always looked like she so desperately wanted to sing, but for some reason, just mouthed along to the words, almost like she was forcing herself not to. And each time, Izuku would take notice. Well, All Might did say I should start building my confidence, I guess this counts. Izuku took deep breath before speaking up. Hey, Kyoka. Kyoka perked up and turned her head to him, keeping her chin propped up on her hand as she leaned against the door. What's up, Izuku? Well, I was just wondering. Izuku tilted his head a bit. Why, do you just mouth along to the songs we listen to? He saw Kyoka's eyes widen slightly at that. If you don't want to answer, I don't mind, just thought I'd ask. The punk rocker pursed her lips slightly and gave a sigh, thinking things over in her head before addressing Izuku again. It's okay, Izuku. She gave him a small smile of reassurance. We're friends, so you don't have to worry about asking me stuff like this. I'll let you know if things get a bit too personal, okay? Oh, okay. Good. Kyoka twirled one of her jacks around her finger in slight apprehension, but if the last few weeks were anything to go by, she knew she could trust Izuku. Those feelings of worry and self-doubt were reined right back as soon as she saw his bright, positive smile. God damn it, why does he have to be so cute? She shook that thought out of her head for the time being and got back on track. Okay, You wanna know why I mostly just mouth the words? It's because, well, her gaze moved down to her legs as she blurted it out. I'm kinda afraid to sing. This made Izuku's eyes widen in surprise, with Bumblebee's holoform glancing back to them from the front seat when he heard that. What? Really? Kyoka, I don't know if you know, but you have a really great voice. Inside his head, Izuku could feel himself gaining more confidence little by little, so he kept going. I'm sure that you must be really good singer considering what you told me about your family. Kyoka rubbed the back of her head. Hey, yeah, I mean, I've sung before, but only in front of my parents. They think I'm good, but that doesn't necessarily mean other people will think I'm good. Maybe, but you never know unless you try, alright. Izuku sent a supportive smile her way. I mean, I would be really happy to hear you sing. All at once, Kyoka's lips parted in surprise and her eyebrows snapped up, with one of her jacks jittering nervously a little bit. Why you would. Oh of course. Izuku nodded before his sights went up to B. And I'm sure that B would, too. Right. In the front seat, Bumblebee pumped a fist and his radio blared out, rock and roll. Hee, so you guys really wanna hear me sing, huh? Kyoka chuckled, trying to hide the fact that her nerves were going into overload. As much as she liked to remain cool and collected about most things, the thought of singing in front of others was definitely intimidating to her. However, she also knew that, if she ever wanted to perform in front of a crowd one day, which was one of her dreams, she'd have to get over that fear, and then a thought came to her head, maybe singing in front of a couple friends is the kind of practice I need. She smiled back to the two and nodded. Well, alright, if you insist. Great. Izuku beamed. I'm sure you'll do great, Kyoka. How the hell can you be such a cinnamon roll? Kyoka thought to herself before taking yet another deep breath. Hey, thanks for the encouraging words, Izuku. Her eyes moved up to B in the front seat. B, give me an instrumental. I don't care which, I pretty much know all the songs I gave you by heart. B's holoform gave a thumbs up and began scrolling through the songs, finally landing on one that intrigued him quite a bit. It was a slow song with a guitar starting out, followed by the booming of a drum in the background. Kyoka's eyebrows rose up slightly at the song choice. Huh, not exactly what I expected, but hey, I can roll with this one. Her eyes went back to Izuku as the music picked up. You ready? Why yeah, go ahead when you're ready. Izuku answered. Okay, here it goes. The song began to play what sounded like a maraca in the background, which was what gave Kyoka the sign to start singing. Nature, nurture, heaven and home. Boom. Izuku could hear the sound of his mind being blown after that one lyric alone. It only served to confirm the thoughts he had been having. Kyoka's singing voice was amazing. Some of all, and by them driven. To conquer every mountain shown. But I've never crossed the river. Her voice was so smooth, so soothing, that it sent a chilly sensation throughout his entire being, the hairs on his neck and arms almost standing up on end. Her tones were low at first, but naturally changed pitch when needed, all while feeling completely natural. He watched as she continued to sing, her lips moving seamlessly with the song as she closed her eyes and got lost in the music, the sound of violins being added as it went on. Braved the forests, braved the stone. Braved the icy winds and fire. Braved and beat them on my own. Yet I'm helpless by the river. Angel, angel, what have I done? I've faced the quakes, the wind, the fire. I've conquered country, crown, and throne. Why can't I cross this river? There was a brief pause in the lyrics, with additional drums being added to the music, its tempo picking up a bit. Izuku watched as Kyoka nodded her head along with the changing beat, with even more drums came in to give a harder beat. Angel, angel, what have I done? I've faced the quakes, the wind, the fire. I've conquered country, crown, and throne. Why can't I cross this river? Pay no mind to the battles you've won. It will take a lot more than rage and muscle. Open your heart and hands, my son. Or you'll never make it over the river. It'll take a lot more than words and guns. A whole lot more than riches and muscle. The hands of the many must join as one. And together we'll cross the river. Izuku could feel goosebumps from his head all the way down to his feet as the song went on, and eventually, slowly came to an end. All the while, Kyoka kept a steady beat while singing the final lyrics. And together we'll cross the river, with one final strum of the guitar and beat of the drums, Kyoka let out a sigh and opened her eyes, only to be met with Izuku staring at her with a slack jaw. Izuku. Kyoka lifted her hand in front of the greenette's face and snapped her fingers, knocking him out of his trance. Huh. Oh, sorry, I just got lost in all of that. Izuku began. It was just amazing. Kyoka's eyebrows snapped up and, once again, she coiled one of her jacks around her finger, a blush coming to her face. Oh, come on Green Bean. It wasn't that. And no, I feel like you need to hear this. Izuku interrupted, taking Kyoka by surprise. Kyoka, I've never heard singing that good before. And nothing I've heard so far from the songs you've showed me can even compete. He put a hand to his chest. It felt like I was on another plane of existence for just a few minutes, and a part of me didn't want to come back down. Despite herself, Kyoka couldn't help the smile that came to her face. That was the first time that anyone other than her parents had heard her sing, and she was being met with such praise that she almost couldn't believe it. Goddamn, I'm really lucky to have a friend like him. But then, her blush furthered as she locked eyes with him, his smile sending a shudder down her spine. And maybe someday, something a bit more. Kyoka still wasn't 100% sure how to handle these relatively new thoughts of hers. She knew that she had a bit of a crush on Izuku, and honestly, she wasn't surprised by that. He was insanely cute, surprisingly jacked, and most importantly, an unbelievably nice guy. Like I said, a complete cinnamon roll. However, going about these feelings was a different matter entirely for her. After all, she had no prior experience to dating or romance in general, so for now, she figured that baby steps would probably be best for now. Let's just see where this all goes. Ahem, well, thank you, Izuku. Kyoka said with a grin. That means quite a lot coming from you. My pleasure, Kyoka. Izuku nodded back. And trust me, I mean every word about it. Also, we're here. The punk rocker snapped her head around to see that they were indeed at the Chiyoda station in Tokyo, with Bumblebee having pulled up to the curb. Directly out front, the trio saw Momo and Mei standing out front, the two ladies waving to them as they approached. Guess I really got into that song, huh? Kyoka murmured. A little bit, I think, hee. Izuku chuckled before suddenly spotting something out the corner of his eye. He set his sights out the window and saw a familiar red and black VTOL jet flying right overhead, which made Kyoka, Mei, Momo and Bee all crane their heads up as well. Windblade had successfully found the meeting point, and if her flight pattern was anything to go by, she was headed directly for All Might's place. Well, guess it's time to learn more about the Transformers. I thought we agreed we were dropping that. Kyoka said with a smirk. Izuku gave her a shrug. Hey, what can I say? I kinda like it. After one more short car ride out into the outskirts of Tokyo, Bumblebee brought the 14s down the familiar forest path to All Might's place, with Momo taking in the forested scenery surrounding them from the passenger seat. I have to admit, I did not know that this was out here. The raven-haired beauty remarked. My family would take trips to Tokyo often and we'd always come out for day trips, but not once did I think this path was here. Why yeah, All Might said that he likes to keep this place out of the public eye. Izuku remarked. He says it's so he can keep the media and all of the fans from finding this place, so if you could please. Tell no one about this place. Momo guessed before giving Izuku a smile. Don't worry, Midoriya, I won't tell a soul. Besides, telling people about this place would mean exposing the Cybertronians, and that is something I definitely won't do. And that's exactly what I like to hear. Mei exclaimed before Bumblebee pulled to a halt, allowing her to open her door. Now come on. The sooner get talking to Windblade, the better. With that, the 14s exited Bumblebee, allowing the yellow bug to transform. At the same time, though, they could all hear the sound of jet engines coming in hot overhead. They craned their head up and, through the small clearing of the trees, Windblade came soaring down toward them. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. In the blink of an eye, she was in her robot mode and landed on the ground, her wings retracting into her back as she knelt down while punching the ground with one hand. Kyoka clapped and gave a cheer as Windblade stood up. Woo! Great superhero landing, Windblade. You've got that down. Thank you, I think. Windblade said with a bit of confusion. But she quickly shook that off and approached the group, smiling down to the 14s. So, did you guys have a good recharge? The quartet glanced to one another, sharing knowing smiles before Momo corrected the fembot. I think you mean, sleep, Windblade. And yes, we did, actually. Oh, hee, yes, sorry about that. The city speaker bowed her head. I'm still getting used to human terminology. I've been studying it overnight and I'm still trying to wrap my head around some things. She placed her hands to her hips and turned toward the house and garage, eyeing them curiously. So, this is where you've been staying, B. ZKRT, that's right. Bumblebee answered. ZKRT, our house, in the middle of our street. The teens all gave a laugh at the choice in song before May piped up. Well, it's not our house, of course. Like we said, this place belongs to. Slam. I am here, busting the door open once again. Everyone gasped as All Might came bursting through the front door, giving Izuku, May and Bumblebee panic attacks and an odd sense of déjà vu. The number one hero seemed pretty fine for the most part, dressed in his yellow pinstripe suit and blue tie. However, if they had seen him with his shirt off, they would see that there was a padded bandage over his wound. Still, he seemed to be in high spirits. Ah, so you have all arrived, finally. Hey All Might. Izuku greeted with a wave, with Kyoka and May doing the same as Momo stayed still. The Greenette could see that the vice rep of 1A seemed to be slightly jarred and unsure of what to do, so he decided to help her along. Ahem, All Might, why you know Yaoyorozu from class, right? Ha. Why of course. All Might guffawed, causing Momo to snap out of her stupor. All Might craned his head down and gave her a salute. Young Yaoyorozu, I trust that you have been taking this news rather well. Momo blinked in surprise and nodded quickly, not wanting to look silly in front of All Might. Oh of course, All Might, sir. Granted, I was a bit off-put when I first found out, but, she smiled to Izuku, Kyoka and May, the trio returning the gesture. These three have made sure to help me feel welcomed in the group. She faced All Might again and bowed her head in respect. And I promise, I won't tell a soul about what's going on here. All Might nodded and bowed back to her. Thank you very much, young Yaoyorozu. And I'm quite glad the others have been helping you along. It definitely pays to have good friends in situations like this. Once he said that, he moved his head upward, locking his gaze with Windblade's optics. And you must be Windblade. He pointed a finger up to her. I saw you take off after spectating the battle. And I saw you pummel that thing so hard it seemed like it was shot out of a cannon. Windblade countered before kneeling down and extending her hand. It's a pleasure to meet you, All Might. Izuku and the others have been quick to sing your praises to me, though it is mostly Izuku. The aforementioned quirk inheritor hid his face in his hands while Kyoka laughed and pat his shoulder in support, with All Might letting out another great guffaw while shaking Windblade's hand. Ha. Oh ho, yes, my young protege is quite the big fan of me. He also joined Kyoka in giving Izuku a pat on the back. But, that's part of the reason why I took him under my wing in the first place. Though the fact that his raw potential and passion for being a hero didn't hurt either. Izuku pulled his face out of his hands and smiled back up to All Might gratefully, which the pro-hero was quick to return. I see. Windblade nodded, getting back up onto her feet. Well, I just want to thank you for all your help in keeping Bumblebee secret. It definitely helps that we have the number one hero of this planet on our side in this situation. You are very welcome, All Might said with a thumbs up. After we found him, we figured it would be best to keep him secret so we could find out exactly where he came from. And now that you're here, I think it's safe to say that question has been answered. Once again, he placed his hand on Izuku's shoulder. Young Midoriya here filled me in over the phone of some of the details this morning. So, you say you're from a planet called Cybertron, and that your leader is a bot called Optimus Prime, correct? Windblade nodded back to him. That's exactly right. And hopefully, with B's help, we'll be able to find out just where Optimus is, hopefully. All Might put his hands to his hips. Worry not, Windblade, for we will all help you in your endeavor. Though unfortunately, I cannot stick around to chat for long. He faced the teens and jerked his thumb over his shoulder. The staff at UA are holding a faculty meeting with Detective Tsukauchi to discuss the incident yesterday, so I won't be back until a bit later on. All Might gave the quartet a salute. But until I do, you kids have fun, okay? Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo all saluted back and said, yes sir. All at once. Excellent. I will see you then. All Might faced Bumblebee once more and sent him a salute as well. And Bumblebee, good luck. I'm sure that today's talks will stir some more memories, for sure. As he always did, Bumblebee returned the gesture with a happy buzz, giving All Might the okay to head out. He crouched down, readying himself for lift-off. Okay, here I go. With a mighty leap, All Might rocketed up past the treetops and into the midday sky, all while calling down to them, I'll see you kids soon. With All Might gone, the 14 sighed simultaneously and Kyoka crossed her arms, giving the group a small shrug. So, what should we do first? I think that's obvious, Jackie. Mei said with an eager grin, her gaze shooting back up to Windblade as she got out her pen and notepad. Please tell us more about Cybertron. Momo nodded in agreement. Yes, I'd actually like to hear more about your planet and its culture as well. It all sounds very interesting. And what about Optimus Prime? Izuku asked. Why you talked about him yesterday like he was a pretty big deal. And what's all this about AW War? Windblade let out a laugh and put her hands up. Hee, okay, I'm getting the picture here. You guys clearly want to know more about Cybertron and I'm ready and willing to give that info to you. She craned her head over to her smaller yellow friend. Especially if it'll help jog B's memory a little bit. Windblade gave him a wink. It should help for what I'm planning to do to help you regain all your memories. Hey, now there's something, B. Kyoka pumped a fist. Now you've got some really big help with your amnesia problem. Bumblebee gave her a happy buzz and pumped his fist up into the air as well, his optics shining with excitement. Alright then, let's start, at the beginning. Windblade walked over to the garage and casually sat herself down in front of the building, with B and the human teens following suit. Let's see, eons ago, it was said that Cybertron was created when two interdimensional beings entered this universe, the godly brothers Primus and Unicron. The former being the incarnation of creation, and the other of destruction. The teens' eyes all widened in surprise. Not 30 seconds in and I'm stunned. Kyoka commented. Yeah, godly beings isn't exactly where I thought we were going here. Mei admitted. The fembot gave an understanding nod. Yes, I know, a pretty far out place to start, but I feel it best to at least regale you kids with how our race came to be first before anything. Windblade waved her hand, setting the scene. But back to Primus and Unicron, they battled for eons over control of the new universe they ended up in, and for a while, Unicron had the upper hand. But, Primus was a rather clever being, and so to defeat his enemy, he lured Unicron into a mental battle on the astral plane of existence, before then luring him back to the physical plane. But not in their original bodies. Instead, Primus tricked Unicron into possessing an asteroid, just as he did, leaving both of them without bodies of their own. This way, the universe would hopefully be spared of their battle. Momo spoke up next. But I suppose it didn't go that way. Windblade shook her head. Nope. Unicron managed to work with what he was given and began to psychically reform his asteroid into a humongous metal planet that was capable of eating other planets as well. And what's worse was that he was able to transform himself into a gigantic robot form so that he could continue his fight against Primus. So, did Primus do the same? Izuku guessed. He did, but instead of giving himself the ability to transform, he instead decided to grace his life force onto beings of his own creation, recognizing that it would take more than one being to defeat Unicron. Windblade explained further. And thus, the planet of Cybertron was born, and so were the first 13 Cybertronians, which were created out of the living metal of the planet itself. Dubbed the Primes, they were able to defeat Unicron and send him through the first space bridge, flinging him all the way across the universe. The teens all made audible oohs at the story in awe, their eyes filled with fascination. This is so interesting, Mei said as she kept jotting notes down. I take it back, hearing this creation myth is utterly enthralling. Hey, glad you think so, Mei. Windblade chuckled a bit, but I'm betting you're wondering when Optimus and the war come into play. She received eager nods from all four of the teens and Bumblebee himself, urging her to go on. Hee okay, well, Cybertron has seen its fair share of wars on and off over the millennia, but the most recent conflict came about because of the caste system that had been established during the planet's golden age. This made everyone's eyes widen immediately. See caste system. Izuku muttered. Windblade nodded solemnly. Yes, and it was a very tight rule set. Namely, your alternate mode was what determined what you would do in Cybertronian society. If you were a bulldozer, you'd end up in mining or construction. If you were a tank, you were destined for the gladiatorial arena. If you were a law enforcement vehicle, you were police, etc. The femme pursed her lips slightly as she recalled those days like it was yesterday. As you can imagine, not many were all that happy about their lot in life being judged by their vehicle modes. Momo winced a little bit as well. Yes, it sounds like it was very limiting. She glanced over to her friends with a curious face. Could you just imagine what it would be like if we had that here, only with quirks? Who's to say we already don't? Izuku said with a saddened face. Quirkless people are already treated like second-class citizens. And if you don't have a strong or flashy quirk, people may just overlook you and say that you aren't fit to be a hero. He gave Momo a serious expression. Our society may not be as intense as Cybertron's, but there is some undeniable evidence of quirk discrimination. The raven-haired girl's face fell at that. Oh, you do make a good point. And Izuku's actually experienced it firsthand. Kyoka pointed out. He was once considered quirkless until he was strong enough to actually use his quirk, allowing it to finally emerge. Momo let out a small gasp. Is that true? She faced Izuku and immediately bowed apologetically. Please forgive me, Midoriya, I didn't mean to offend you, honest. It's okay, Yaoyorozu, really. Izuku assured. Honestly, I just thought that I'd point out that things could use some improving on our world as well. A good point to make, Izuku. Windblade concurred. Otherwise, your planet could potentially fall to the same fate as Cybertron. Mei glanced up to her notepad with a worried expression. Oh, I'm guessing we're getting to the messy stuff now. Once again, Windblade gave a solemn nod. Indeed. You see, there were many critics of the caste system, or as it was more widely known, functionism, but none of them were confident enough to speak up about it to Cybertron's government. However, there was actually one Cybertronian who was able to speak up about it, having managed to go from being a miner to a gladiator in the pits of Kaon. One who named himself after one of the 13 original primes. He was Megatronus. She saw that the teens and B's faces were all visibly anxious at the way she spoke his name, as they should be. Megatronus vowed to challenge Cybertron's government and demand that all Cybertronians be treated as equals and forge their own path. The teens all slightly relaxed at hearing that, though Bumblebee's face was still quite nervous. Well, that sounds good. Mei said in approval. He sounded like a strong candidate to get behind. Yes, and that's what many others thought as well. Windblade affirmed. He gathered a large following very quickly, and managed to garner the attention of a certain data clerk from the Yakin Hall of Records. His name was Orion Pax. Windblade then got up to her feet, gesturing her hands to accentuate her points. You see, Orion was also quite critical of the functionist society we lived in, and thus, he reached out to Megatronus, who became somewhat of a mentor to him. And as Megatronus left the gladiatorial arena for the Poticle, he saw fit to shorten his name. The teens saw Windblade's irises furrow and her lips sneer, and all of them got a chill down their spines as they heard what happened next. Before on, Megatron appeared before the High Council to propose his own idea for a just society. And it was here when he revealed his true plans, to overthrow the government by force, and arrogantly demanding to be named the next prime. This revelation left the entire group stunned. Well, guess things really didn't end up going the way we thought it would. Izuku said. And neither did a lot of us, really. Windblade admitted. Before, many of us saw Megatronus as a true revolutionary, but he turned out to be anything but to the more peace-driven people of our race. Among which included, Orion Pax. She began walking around as she regaled her audience with what happened next. You see, after Megatron's demands were made, Orion stepped in and presented his own beliefs, which included not needing violence as a means of achieving justice. A smile crept to her face as she went on. The sparks and minds of the council were moved by Orion's words. Here, for the first time in eons, was someone who was truly worthy of being a prime. A collective gasp was heard from all 4 teens, with Kyoko wearing a smile of her own. "Oh, I think I know where this is going. Now you're catching on." Windblade winked. However, the only way Orion could achieve becoming a prime was by earning the legendary Matrix of Leadership, a vessel which is said to store the wisdom of the primes. With his plans crushed, Megatron spitefully severed his ties with Orion and the Council, and thus began the war. Megatron used his growing band of followers to wage this war, dubbing them Decepticons. To oppose him, the High Council banded together a group of its own, made up of bots who were dedicated to peace. We were dubbed Autobots, named after the fact that we are autonomous robotic organisms. Windblade laced her fingers together and glanced down to the ground. Unfortunately, Megatron's ambition was now to find the Matrix of Leadership for himself, wherever it was. And in time, warfare consumed Cybertron, poisoning the planet to its core and halting the production of the lifeblood of our race, Energon. May gasped once again. "Wait, so that's what powers you? I thought you guys just ran on electricity or something." "Well, we definitely have electricity flowing through us," Windblade explained. "But Energon is what keeps us going and what powers these." All of a sudden, Windblade's breastplate opened up, revealing a bright, glowing orb that was pulsating in her chest. The teens all stared in awe at whatever that was. What is that?" Izuku asked. "This is a spark," Windblade answered. "The very thing that makes us what we are. Every Cybertronian has one, and each is different." She closed her chest up and a saddened expression came to her face. Unfortunately, after the core of Cybertron was poisoned, the production of Energon slowed to a crawl, meaning that as the war went on, it also became a fight over resources as well as ideologies. "So, what happened next?" May tapped her pencil to her chin. "You guys must have done something to try and help the core, right?" "We did, or rather, Orion did," Windblade clarified. "You see, he traveled there to try and reverse the effects, only to be met with the very spark of our creator, Primus himself." She saw the teens all wearing stunned expressions, and with conviction in her voice, she continued. "The ailing Primus sensed the innate nobility within Orion, and bestowed the Matrix upon him." The 4 teens all smiled widely as Windblade finished her tale. It was thus that a surprised and humbled Orion Pax came to be Optimus, the last of the primes. The crowd stayed silent for a while as they all continued to smile up at Windblade, with all of them getting goosebumps from her words. "Whoa, that is so cool." Izuku piped up first, the young man jumping up to his feet. "Optimus sounds like a bot who would be considered a true hero here on Earth." Kyoko nodded immediately. "Hell yeah, almost like he's Cybertron's version of All Might or something." "Hee, well, if Optimus heard you make that comparison, he'd assure you that he's anything but," Windblade said. "He's very humble like that. That said, he does believe that freedom should be the right of all sentient beings, so yeah, something tells me he'd make a great hero on this planet, though the fame and attention isn't exactly his thing." She then eyed Bumblebee again, and he seemed to be staring straight at the ground. "So, remember anything about Prime after that?" Truth be told, Bumblebee had been getting flashes of the red and blue bot who he had become very familiar with through repeat viewings of that garbled message, and every single one of them had been a rather positive memory. He recalled fighting side by side with him on the battlefield, heading out on Energon collecting missions with him, and even simply having good conversations with him on multiple occasions. B craned his head up and spoke through his radio. "ZRKT, Prime, ZRKT, was a ZRKT, good friend," he concluded. Windblade's smile widened at that. "Yes, he was indeed. He was a friend to all of us, for sure." Momo raised her hand. "So, after Optimus became a prime, what happened then?" "Yeah, did you guys ever get your Energon supplies back?" May asked as well. "Well, the war raged on, and unfortunately, as it did, the planet's supply of Energon kept dwindling." Windblade wore a frustrated expression as she crossed her arms. And even more unfortunate was that with their superior firepower, the Decepticons were able to claim most of it. However, Optimus proposed a solution: send an away team out into the galaxy to find a planet that had more Energon on it. And so, the Ark initiative was started, and the result was a great spacecraft that would take a platoon of Autobots out to the far reaches of the cosmos to find Energon. We managed to use a space bridge to get the Ark through, and to make sure Megatron couldn't follow, we blew it up immediately after they emerged safely on the other side. The teens all gaped at Windblade when she said that, with Izuku speaking his mind. Wow, that sounds pretty risky. I'm as surprised everything went without a hitch. Well, not everything, Windblade admitted, craning her head down while hugging her arms. You see, this operation was also important in that we were sending something else through the space bridge as well. She clenched her metal hands into fists. You see, Megatron had his own plans to restore the planet's energon, and of course, it involved using a powerful and sacred Cybertronian artifact to do so. Bumblebee's optics widened as he began getting random flashes of his memory once again, this time seeing a rather familiar metal item in them. It was shaped like a dodecahedron, and he recalled how it glowed with a powerful light before all of its sides opened up to reveal the power within. Once the flashes stopped, B spoke up again. ZRTK, the ZRKT, all, ZRKT, spark. Windblade's optics widened and the teens turned to the yellow bug in surprise. Oh, why yes, B. The Allspark. I guess you're getting more of your memory back than we thought. So, wait, what is the Allspark, then? Kyoka inquired. The city speaker was all too happy to answer. Well, you know how I said that our sparks are small pieces of Primus power. Well, the Allspark is the conduit for that power. It's pretty much what grants us life. Her iris furrowed at the next part. And of course, Megatron wanted to use that power not only to restore the Energon, but so that he could control it all for himself, which would be an instant loss on the Autobots' side. However, Optimus had a last-ditch solution, to jettison the Allspark into outer space via the space bridge, so that neither Autobot or Decepticon could have it. Wait, what? May shouted, with everyone else wearing shocked faces. But, wouldn't that mean that no new Cybertronian life could be created then? Yes, and it's a decision that still weighs on Prime's mind even now, or I would assume so. Windblade said sullenly. He always had the intention of finding it after the war and returning it to Cybertron, but after the Ark launched, things didn't go as well as we hoped. Her shoulders sagged a bit as she told the next part. As you know, we lost contact with the Ark centuries ago, and losing the Allspark only made Megatron's warpath even more destructive. It was to the point where the Autobot forces left on Cybertron dwindled down to nearly nothing, forcing a group of us to evacuate Cybertron so we could even stand a chance. She craned her head over to Bumblebee with a saddened face. And Prime actually ordered B to come to this planet, as the Ark was last detected around these interstellar coordinates. B by himself, Izuku muttered. Windblade gave a sigh. Yes, we wanted to send a bigger group along with B, but if we did, it would attract the Decepticons' attention and they'd more than likely notice us coming here. She glanced back over to B again. When Bumblebee landed, he was supposed to send out a signal that could only be picked up on Autobot frequencies, allowing us to follow him here. Unfortunately, that ended up not happening, and for about 3 centuries, we've been hopping from planet to planet, hoping to outrun the Decepticon forces while searching for B and Optimus. But now you have found him, Kyoka said as she gestured over to her yellow friend. So there's still hope, right? Now you can bring the Autobots here and start your search for the Ark. Momo brightened up at that. Indeed. And perhaps you'll be able to find Optimus Prime as well, if we're lucky. However, as they spoke, Momo couldn't help but notice that Windblade was wearing a rather apprehensive face, making the raven-haired girl raise a brow. Windblade, is there something the matter? Well, I may have been saving an itsy-bitsy detail for last. Windblade apprehensively answered. Because as good as this news is, there's also a bit of bad news. Oh, come on, I'm sure it can't be that bad. May assured, only to see that Windblade's face didn't change. Is it? The city speaker gave out a sigh. You see, the way I managed to find my way here involved tailing a duo of Decepticons. She squeezed her optics shut at the next part. And, they may have made planet fall before I did. The entire group was left frozen, a cold chill running through all of them at this rather unfortunate news. What? The quartet nearly screamed. Meanwhile, At the Sector 7 base in Ibagawa, Agent Fowler still couldn't believe that they had allied themselves with those Decepticons. The man could feel himself shudder just by thinking of that name alone. For a scientist, Powell really doesn't like to look at the damn facts. He thought to himself in frustration. Letting two beings who clearly look and sound evil use our computers with all of our info on heroes and villains on them is not what I would call a good thing. He sighed to himself as he went through more of the files on his desk. Well, at least NBE-3 is safe, for now. At that moment, a knock came at Fowler's door, making his head perk up. Come in. Through the door came none other than Jacob Burns, the man holding a folder in his hands. Ah, Jacob, coming in to talk about how obvious of a bad idea this whole thing is. Trust me, Bill, I wish I was. Jacob said before putting the file on Fowler's desk. Since you did this to me yesterday, I feel it's only fitting I get to do it to you today. I take it you've already heard of the incident at UA, right? PFF'd, who hasn't? Fowler asked as he grabbed the folder. It's all over the news. Thank God those kids are all alright. Hey, yeah, and thank God All Might was there. Jacob added. I don't think anyone but him could have taken down whatever that thing was. Fowler couldn't help but smile to himself at that. All Might, a hero that he knew quite well on a personal level. After all, after getting his butt saved by him 5 years back during that incident, how could he not have known him well? He still remembered the conversation they had following that battle, and the secret that he was entrusted with on that day. Since then, he made sure to keep in constant correspondence with All Might, even serving as his liaison with the US government whenever the opportunity arose. Old friend, I really hope you aren't pushing yourself too far. Despite his worrying thoughts, Fowler gave a chuckle as he opened the folder up. Hee hee, well, what more can be said? He's the #1 pro, after all. Yeah, too true, Burns trailed off and sighed, rubbing his temples in slight frustration. Honestly, the past day feels like it's been a blur. First, we make contact with alien robots and then villains and monsters start showing up out of nowhere to attack the best hero school in the nation. Bill, what the hell is going on? Fowler shook his head. I honestly couldn't tell ya, Burns. I've been trying to figure it all out myself. He moved his eyes over the papers and pictures inside the folder, taking it all in. The pictures were of the exterior of the USJ after the attack had happened, with police and ambulances having gathered out front. The UA staff were all out there as well, along with the students who were involved in the attack. So tell me, what exactly did you want me to see in this file? Well, at first glance, things seem pretty normal here for a standard crime scene. Jacob explained. Aside from the fact that it happened in UA, of course. But if you take a closer look, you'll see something that should really not be there. The special agent peered closer at the pictures, seeing if there was really anything that stood out from the norm. A few seconds later, he came across a picture that made his eyebrow raise up in surprise. Well, I'll be a bald eagle. There, parked off to the side, was a yellow, 1973 Volkswagen Beetle. Something that was definitely out of place among all of the modern vehicles that were there at the moment. What's more, there appeared to be a young, blonde man leaning up against it, staring worriedly at the teens as they were questioned by police. Now there's something you don't see every day. Exactly my thought, Jacob said as he pointed to the picture. And here's the real kicker, I've traced every single owner of VW bugs in Japan, and all of them are either in auto museums or are rich tycoons who collect vintage cars. None of them look like this kid here. Did you try tracing him? Fowler asked. We ran him through several face recognition searches. Came up with nothing. Fowler furrowed his brow and faced Jacob again. Where exactly are you thinking with this, Burns? Come on, Bill, isn't it obvious? Jacob asked, gesturing to the Beetle again. A yellow car over 3 centuries old in pristine condition just randomly showing up at UA. High from seemingly nowhere. And on top of that, the guy who seemingly owns it isn't even coming up in our searches. He plucked the picture up and gave it a nod. I'm thinking that we might have found our bot. There was a brief pause before Fowler raised an eyebrow. And you haven't told the General or the Decepticons about this? Jacob sneered before shaking his head. Honestly, a part of me doesn't even want to. You and I both know that these bots here can't be up to anything good. I mean, it's in their damn names. I know, but if we withhold this information from them, we'll risk both our jobs and potentially our lives. Bill pointed out, giving him a questioning face. You really wanna take that chance of the cons blowing you up or something? Jacob sighed again and shook his head. No, I really don't. As much as a part of me wants to rip this up and burn it, I'm sure the general will find out sooner or later. Fowler gave him a shrug. No doubt about that. But hey, look at it this way, if Powell's plan is a success and the cons do share some of their secrets with us, we can always turn their tech on them if they betray us. Hey, we can only hope. Jacob said as both he and Fowler stood up. Come on, let's go break the news to our new friends. Back at All Might's house, Windblade was standing still, with a rather frustrated expression on her face. For the past few minutes, she had been dealing with the fallout of her breaking the bad news to her new allies, and they had made it quite clear that they were now in panic mode. Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo were all scrambling around, asking one another what they were going to do if the cons somehow found them. Meanwhile, Bumblebee had resigned himself to huddling up behind the garage, his optics full of fear as his entire body shook. And that left Windblade standing all by herself, her arms crossed as she let them all get it out of their systems. This is bad, this is really bad. Izuku exclaimed. What are we going to do? The Decepticons could literally be anywhere. Kyoka shouted. What can we do if we can't even find them? Momo hugged her arms around herself, her nerves starting to take over. And if they've adopted disguises, that will make them even harder to find, but then, her eyes widened. Oh gosh, what if they manage to find us first? Mei ran her fingers through her hair, trying to get a hold of herself and think of a plan. Oh okay, let's not freak out here. All we have to do is stay hidden for as long as we can, gah. I can't think of anything. Boom. The quartet were suddenly pulled out of their panicked state as the ground underneath them shook, throwing them all off balance briefly and causing them to crane their heads up to Windblade. The city speaker placed her hands on her hips and raised an irage down to them. Okay, let's all calm down here. Mei's right, now isn't the time to freak out, namely because you didn't let me finish. The teens all faced her in shock while Bumblebee peeked his head out from behind the garage, coming back over to hear what she had to say. Yes, the Decepticons are on Earth, but thankfully, we have a way of avoiding their detection. Windblade pointed to the insignia at the base of her neck, the same one that Bee had on his foot. You see, both Autobots and Decepticons emit a unique energy signature that can be detected by our scanners, but these signals can be masked. So, I did so for both Bee and myself, meaning that if the cons are searching for us, they'll have a harder time doing it since your signals are turned off. Kyoka finished as Izuku, Momo and Mei's smiles all returned, with Bumblebee playing a stock sound of people cheering and applauding while raising his fists up. Haha. Great way of thinking ahead, Windblade. Why yeah, hopefully this'll give us time for us to make up a good plan to keep you guys hidden. Izuku added. Windblade raised a finger with a knowing grin. Or, until my backup gets here. This made everybody do a double take and the femme gave them a nod. Yep, you didn't really think I wasn't alone out there in space, did you? I just got a head start on the rest of my team. They should be here relatively soon, I hope. Mei let out a breath, holding a hand to her head in disbelief. More Autobots are coming to Earth. Once she let that fact sink in, however, her beaming smile returned and she let out another excited squeak. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be so awesome. It does sound very exciting. Momo agreed before glancing over to All Might's house. Though something tells me we're going to need a better hiding spot for all of them. Izuku winced as he too eyed his mentor's abode. Yeah, I have a feeling All Might won't appreciate having a whole squad of Cybertronians all bunking at his place. Hey, yeah, that's probably for the best. Windblade snickered. Trust me, he wouldn't want someone like Bulkhead moving around this place. Sure, it's open, but you do not want to chance the big lug tripping up. Bumblebee's eyes widened as that name rang through his head, and once again, he began to get random flashes. He saw a big, green bot, but not like the one he had seen before. This wasn't Titanic, but rather more rotund in shape with broad shoulders and a very large, silver chin. It was then that the others took notice of Bee staring off and Kyoka spoke up, Yo, B. You okay? The yellow mech shook his head before focusing in on them, tapping his head while speaking through his radio. ZRKT. I remember, ZRKT, my old friends. Everyone began to brighten up at that news. That's great to hear, B. Windblade grinned. If you remember Bulkhead and Optimus, then is there anyone else you remember? B pondered for only a few seconds before suddenly, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. He transformed almost as quick as a flash, his holoform activating before he opened up his glove compartment. There, the blonde pulled out a certain piece of paper that he always kept on hand, the same one with a certain sketch on it. He got out of himself and raised the paper up to Windblade, her optics focusing in on it curiously. Why yeah, that's right. The femme heard Izuku pipe up. BB did draw that picture a couple days ago. But then, Windblade let out a gasp at the picture, seeing the face of her best friend having been drawn to perfection. And it was then that she recalled that B did say that he remembered her as well. That's right, you said you remembered RC, didn't you? Then, her lips curled up into a sly grin, chuckling a little bit. Hee hee, why am I not surprised? The 4 teens directed their attention back to her. Windblade, what do you mean? Momo asked. Do you know that bot? Oh yes, she and I are best friends, actually. Windblade explained. Her name is RC, and she's an Autobot intelligence officer, one who also happened to be partnered up with Bumblebee. Her optics glanced over and saw the surprised expression on B's face, once again making her laugh a little. Hee hee, between her intelligence gathering skills and B's scouting ability, they made for one of the best recon teams in the Autobot ranks. Ah, I see, Kyoka said, a knowing smile of her own coming to her face. So those two are pretty tight, huh? You could say that. Windblade winked, causing the blonde holoform below her to shrink back a bit. Hey, don't worry, B, I'm not gonna tease you. But trust me, the fact that you remember both RC and Bulkhead is a good sign. And guess what? They're with my squad and will more than likely be making Planet Fall sometime soon. B's face brightened up in excitement, the holoform's smile widening back up. It was then that Windblade realized something. Oh yeah, I should probably do that, too. The humans all eyed one another at what the femme said in bewilderment before May decided to ask. And what would that be, Windblade? Windblade faced her new human friends, and her eyes shifted from a cool blue to a bright green all at once. This. At that moment, a green beam of light suddenly shot out and began scanning over the 3 humans, making both Kyoka and Momo give out a sudden scream. Izuku and May were spooked as well, but the very next second, they recognized what exactly this was. Ah! Kyoka shrieked, shuddering as the green light washed over her body. Windblade, what the heck are you doing? What is this? Momo cried out as she was about to step out of the scanner's range, only for it to stop just as quickly as it had begun. What in the world? WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Without warning, Windblade suddenly transformed into her jet mode, and her cockpit opened up. The quartet of teens all set their gazes up to the opened hatch and saw something taking shape in the pilot's seat. And once it had, all of their jaws dropped, especially Momo and Kyoka's. What the fuck? Kyoka shouted right as the new figure jumped right out of the aircraft. Standing before them now was a tall, beautiful Japanese woman with bright blue eyes and short, raven black hair that was styled into a bob cut. She wore a bright red leather jacket with gold buttons, a black undershirt and a pair of blue jeans. Her feet were donned with black, thick-heeled boots, adding a bit of extra height to her. The newly created holoform flicked her head a bit, causing her hair to wave around her face a little. So, you guys like? Bumblebee almost couldn't believe his eyes, and he couldn't get over the fact that even in her holoform, Windblade was still taller than he was. Still, he found it only appropriate to respond, ZRKT, damn. Took the words right out of my mouth. Kyoka admitted. So that's how holoforms are made. May gave a cheery grin to her punk rocker friend. Yup, B did it to us on accident and now Windblade's done it to us on purpose. Pretty crazy, right? And surreal, Momo said as she approached Windblade's new holoform, shocked at how much it really resembled her. She could spot a few differences here and there, but for the most part, it was like she was now seeing a relative she never knew she had. I mean, wow, you could probably pass as my older sister, and I don't even have one. Windblade rubbed the back of her head a bit. Yeah, I was kinda zeroed in on you when I was scanning you guys. I hope you don't mind, Momo. Oh, no, it's fine, really. Momo assured. It's just, wow, it's really shocking. I figured as much. Windblade shrugged. Apologies for